Catherine Delahunty.
Tēnā koe, Mr Speaker. Tēnā koutou. The issues in this bill have been thoroughly covered in previous stages, so I'll just speak about the context and why we're voting against it. The changes to vetting procedures for people involved in home care and tradespeople and others working in schools are an effort to make the process less onerous. And underneath that is a need to be fair to adults while protecting children. And you only have to look at the track record of some institutions, from the churches to some schools, to know that children under so-called care and protection are vulnerable and that people have taken the opportunity to exploit them. Thus, the Green Party welcomes a measured approach in this bill, but would also like to address a deeper question. How is it that vulnerable are so often attacked by people with greater power? This phenomena is greater than a few individuals with sick behaviour. In the 1950s, these issues had no names, but we all knew it happened. These days, the issues are named, and that is healthy. However, some social attitudes towards children and sexuality and power remain incredibly toxic, as the internet child pornography has comprehensively demonstrated. So this bill is fair enough on these issues, and a review of procedures for fairness for all is important, and we support that. In terms of data matching, the bill appears to be playing a role of coherent modernisation, and we support that as well. However, on the matters of corporatisation around statutory managers for failing schools and the term body corporate and the issue of combined boards, the bill is unsatisfactory. Again, the context has to be analysed. The Minister took pains in the committee stages to explain that the word corporate had no sinister intent, and I appreciate that. However, one person's progressive is somebody else's Trojan horse. And the Green Party is opposed to the language in Clause 22 of Part 1, which confirms the legitimacy of the body corporate governance role. And everything that has happened in this House since the second reading has made us even stronger on this issue, given the direction this government's taking towards privatisation across the board. This is the major theme I want to talk about, which is related to Part 1 of the bill and links the government's overall educational platform, particularly with reference to their agreement with the ACT Party. We don't support board combining because it erodes local community power. And we don't support the term body corporate because it's a red light. It's a warning that a government has an interest in facilitating public-private partnerships, or as we call them, publicly palatable privatisation, in education as well as in prisons and who knows what else. Public-private partnerships are useful to a government which made a public promise not to privatise state assets, but wants to advance by stealth a privatisation agenda. The terms used in Clause 22 in this bill have alerted us to the underlying issue, and given what has happened to the prisons, not to mention the axing of public bodies such as ECAN and the latest Local Government Act Amendment Bill, it cannot be said that we're being alarmist or extreme in wanting to defend at every point public assets in education. So the issue for us is a quality public education system and the gradual encroachment of the private sector. The proposal to allow a private contractor to build a school and thus have a lease is not a new idea. In other countries, the public-private partnerships have been trialled and have resulted in very mixed outcomes for schools and communities. I met with United Kingdom researcher Dexter Whitfield recently, touring with his book Global Auction of Public Assets, where he talks specifically about the education sector and the effects of public-private partnerships on infrastructure, which relates to the wording in this bill in terms of the body corporate. Meeting him reminded me of the extent to which this bill is not so much softening up the electorate, but confirming a trend towards a corporate model of education, starting with the confused nightmare of school bus contracting and the experts which surround teachers who are contractors instead of teachers themselves in terms of professional development and educational support. The assumption is that the corporate contractors are more efficient, but as Dexter Highfield documented, this is not remotely or necessarily true. A corporate organisation has a primary duty to its shareholders, and a school in Northern Ireland is a good example, which sat empty for more than a year because of a dispute with a contractor who benefited, but not the children. So although we have supported the improvements made by Labour's MPs Trevor Mallard and Grant Robertson, we don't support this bill. And we are disappointed that no other party in this House can join the dots and see the links between public-private models which are being shoehorned into schools and this bill, as well as what is being force-fed into water management and into prisons. There is a coherent agenda here, and we do not support it. We don't want to be buying back our schools, their buildings and their governance, like the rail tracks that we've had to buy back as a country in the future. It's a failed model which costs citizens across the board over time, and it's been done once, let's not do it again. So we stand on our record of opposing this, and we know that somebody will read Hansard in future and see that the Green Party was signalling the direction that education was going in at every stage with every bill. We alone had stood up and challenged the erosion of public schools facilitated by this bill. We reject it, and we support the public school system, including kohanga and kura, for the benefit of all children, to be governed and owned by the public of this country, that tomorrow's schools doesn't become about corporate schools, a corporate tomorrow, but about the governance of parents and teachers and kids for the benefit of all students. Inequity and privatisation, Mr. Speaker, are not private matters. They require our critique, as does this bill, and hence our opposition to it. It pains me to have to vote against it because there are many parts of the bill that we thought were very sensible. We thought the select committee process was useful. We thought the negotiation was useful. We wanted to make amendments that would actually be practical, and we supported the amendments Labor put up. But we've come to this point now where, having seen what's happened in this House on water this week, having seen what happened to ECAN under urgency, we refuse to close our eyes. We refuse to pretend that there isn't an agenda here that affects education. If anyone read the subtext, the Education Forum, this week, you will have seen that public-private partnerships is the agenda. Well, I read it because it had a word PPP in it, and I wanted to see what they were saying. And then I saw what Bill English said. And it's clear what Bill English is thinking. He's made it really clear. Let's try an experiment. Let's privatise. Let's see what we can do through this model. And it is privatisation by stealth. It means that they can keep an election promise and hoodwink the people of this country that through bills like this, that nothing's really changing. Well, actually, people, things are changing really, really fast, and every little bit of softening up is of concern to us, and we stand on the principle that public means public and private means private, and that the middle ground is being co-opted for the benefit of the few and the powerful. And in education, there is nothing more damaging than the few and the powerful having more rights and more resources than the children across this country who deserve the best at all levels. As the movie Boys said, every child, and that child came from one of the poorest homes, has potential. And in order to keep that potential, we absolutely need our schools not to be governed by corporates, not to be fixed by corporate agendas, but to be governed and fixed by our own initiative as communities and our own educational ethos in the public school system. So the Green Party is proud to be standing up and saying, on the record, we oppose this bill. Kia ora koutou.